Hey, early childhood educators. Welcome to Human Skills Training, where we translate modern neuroscience into what actually works in practice. I'm your host, Chris Danilo, and my background is in child development and neuroscience. And for the last few years, I've been facilitating high energy, useful, and fun professional development workshops for educators like you. Enjoy this episode. I hope you learn a lot, but more importantly, I hope you do something great with it. Hello, Meg McDoniel. It is good to see your face.
Hey.
Thank you for being with me and with us. How are you?
Good. Doing well.
Doing well. For the
Yeah.
people who don't know you, you and I have been friends for, I don't know, like 10 years, maybe?
Yeah.
Is that a real number?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
wild thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I-
Because I've lived in state college for about 10 years. Yeah, that's how yeah.
yeah, we met at Penn State. You were working in a lab. I was sort of just getting out of my work in a lab. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like you're a person who I feel like has done a lot of different things. You've been in different roles, you've been in different positions, you've been a teacher, you've been a researcher, you've been in policy. Like I feel like you've been in so many different seats and places. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to like tell people maybe a little bit about how you got into the world of child development? And I think people will find that I think people will find that you're true and authentic as I do, because quickly they'll realize that you have a daycare cold right now in your voice.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. I like to live out my research. So I just go around to daycares to pick up their germs. No, my daughter brings them home
Little
with her.
munchkin.
Um,
And now you're sick.
yes,
What's more
and now I
authentic than
am
that is
sick.
you
I
talking
know.
about this while being sick from a daycare cold.
From a daycare. Yep. Yeah. I really love early childhood.
Mm.
Yes. So, what got me into it, I think, was just a series of, kind of opportunities, I'll
Mm.
say. It started with, going to school in my undergrad and doing psychology, and I just like happened to take a developmental psychology course, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I kind of had those questions,
Yeah.
liked those questions. So that was kind of on the like more research side. But more importantly, they had a laboratory preschool that they had people work at, and I was like, that seems like
Oh,
my jam. I want to go work there. So, I mean, I just worked for like maybe an hour a week or
right.
something, and on the side on the side of my hour a week job,
Yeah.
was also doing research, doing research in that developmental
Right.
lab, and I think that's kind of just like on the research side. That was a lot of my questions just ended up being developmental without me realizing it,
Yeah.
and a lot of my questions, well, ended up being like social emotional in
Yeah.
nature. So I was in a cognitive psychology lab, but I was always asking questions about like children's feelings and emotions.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I loved working with kids. That was like,
Yeah.
the highlight of my week, when I just had that hour a day to hang out with, 3 and 4 and 5 year olds. And so I was like, when I was graduating, it was kind of like, okay, like I like research, I like these other things, I have these questions. But really the thing that, kind of again gets me going,
Yeah.
gets me like
Yeah.
super energized is just hanging out with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when I chose to try teaching, and was able to teach preschool through Teach for America. So I went down to St. Louis and I taught preschool, and that in itself was like, again, it was awesome, but it was also reinforcing that like, okay, like ABCs are great. I know kids
Yeah.
need to read. Like, I
Right.
roll.
Right. Right.
Just kidding.
Right.
Very important. But like, I was
Right.
so much more concerned that my kids like knew what to do when they're feeling sad,
Right.
and they knew how to name it, and they knew that in certain
Right.
cases they can come to me, in certain cases they can comfort their friend, things like
Mm.
that. So again, just kind of like
Yeah.
focusing in on social emotional things. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I think the fact that I was so interested in those questions
Yeah.
still, and not so much interested in like the teaching part of it,
Yeah.
like
Right.
the 10 other skills that they needed to be learning, kind of made me think like, oh, I should probably go and like focus on the early, the social emotional piece and go back to research.
Mm.
Yeah, so I ended up coming to Penn State for grad school and working in a emotion development lab, which was interesting because kind of went from like the education, like, of boots on the ground
Yeah.
education space to like a more basic emotion laboratory that like is, bringing kids and parents in, and like we're not in schools there. Like at that point, it wasn't really doing much in schools. But then I had the opportunity to get some training, like applying that emotion, like really
Yeah.
basic emotion development piece to education
Yeah.
spaces. And so that's kind of looking at, the focus that we had was on children with kind of internalizing, so like children with maybe like some risks for anxiety,
Right.
essentially. And those were the kids I was really worried about when I was teaching
Right.
was I saw all sides of it. I saw a student come in. She had lost some family members
Oh.
not too soon before came in, and she, to be honest, like lost her mind when she came
Oh.
because her mom's dropping her off and leaving, and she's just lost a
Right.
bunch of family members. A grandma, her father had left,
Oh.
and and so in my mind, like, yeah, she's like, having these like huge like tantrums and meltdowns, but really she's just sad and like scared.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like, that is what I was like concerned
Yeah.
about. And then I had on the other side, like I had little kids who, kind of shrunk down. She kind
Right.
of,
Blew up. Yeah.
got big.
Right. Right.
And then I had other kids like really shrink down when they were feeling those feelings. And,
Right.
it's very easy to say, okay, to the little girl who's kicking and screaming, like, I have to attend to you. It's much harder to remember to attend to the little one who's like in the corner being
Quiet.
quiet, but maybe feeling the same thing,
Right.
maybe missing their mom or missing someone. So, I
Whoa.
thinking about like learning about children's emotions in that way, and like what gives them like risks for, things like places where adults need to kind of intervene or just support, and thinking about what that looks like in the school context when, you've got a lot of other factors coming in.
Mhm.
You've got your parents still, like you've got parents like coming and going, dropping their kids
Yeah.
off. You've got them having something, dealing with whatever's happening at home. And then you've also got, a teacher and, sometimes like a principal or a center director popping in, or,
Right.
different adults
Yeah.
coming in and out. It's a very destabilizing time for
Right.
kids.
It's
Like,
got to be confusing, right? They've been in one place
yeah,
for one time and with like,
yeah,
limited
for
bubble
their
of people,
entire
and then
life.
yeah, right. Which is
Yeah,
huge, right? Like, how many times have you talked to a kid, like a 4-year-old, and they're just like, "Oh,
yeah,
remember like a million years ago when I was 3?"
yeah,
And you're like,
right,
"Yeah, like
yeah.
I
When I
was
was little.
right,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
25% of your life ago." Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. And like every adult who comes into their life it can have a huge impact. And so I think like remembering that and knowing that,
Yeah.
that's kind of some of the work to think about, okay, how can the adults, whether it's parents or whether
Yeah.
it's teachers, or, even thinking about like, the whole classroom
Hmm.
context, like all the adults in the
Hmm.
classroom, how do we make sure that everyone kind of just is like aware enough to be able to know what's going on with
Yeah.
kids, feel confident supporting kids and whatever their needs are.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like brought me to this, the space of
Right.
looking, doing work in early childhood, research in different policies, working with different state and local
Yeah.
agencies, things like that.
Dang. So like
Sorry if
what's
that was
funny?
too long.
No, no, no. No, like one of the things that's cool about this is like you and I have been friends for a while and like I still like learn little things here. Like it's just so fun because like the
Yeah.
nuance of like, oh, I took a class that like I wasn't sure if I wanted to take. Like it seemed fine. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize like there was that like level of chance in there too. So I was just
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
so as you're talking, like kind of two things popped up. One, social emotional learning. Like,
Yeah.
I think most people who would be listening to this maybe have heard that or kind of know what it is. But I think there's
Mm-hmm.
this like, is it emotional intelligence? Is it like
Mm.
just, is it allowing yourself to feel things? Like, so like I as a person who's been in this world, like, how would you describe or explain what like SEL is?
Mm-hmm.
And then I have another
I
question.
think, yeah, yeah. I think when you said emotion
Mm,
intelligence, I'm like, well, it definitely is part, like,
yeah,
that's part of it. It's just like cueing in
yeah,
on like again, kind of like as the adult, cueing in, being able to tell and respond. But I think more than that, it's the tools of what to do when you're having a certain emotion, or what to do, how to identify it, how to problem solve.
uh,
I'm feeling this feeling, and, you know, I want to throw something across the room, like, oh, but,
whoa,
I know that could hurt someone. It's like
yeah,
teaching kids, like, that's the sequence of, like, if this happens, then,
right,
it's okay to, like, feel that feeling, but, like, how do we, like,
right, right,
act out on that feeling? And if you're angry,
right,
I think that's when using, like, those calm down corners and
right,
things like that is really useful. Or
yeah,
even just like, you know, getting a kid to say they're angry.
right,
I feel like we usually kind of try to get kids to press down on anger,
right,
and like even as an adult, I'm just like, anger is such a
right,
useful feeling.
yeah,
Like sadness is hard because sadness makes you, I think it's good too, like, but sadness makes you want to like stop and like, reflect.
melancholy,
Anger makes you want to do stuff, and so like how do
right,
we like kind of channel that? Like, you're angry, but can, like, let's like use that as motivation.
right,
That's kind of a side note, but that's kind of what I think about
yeah,
with social emotional learning, is like it's knowing about feelings. It's being able to recognize other people's feelings, especially, when we're talking about preschoolers, like obviously like they need to learn that too,
hmm,
and they can and they do. But I think as adults, it's more like thinking through, getting the tools of,
right,
okay, if you're
right,
angry, here are two things you can do with that anger. You can go and try to like calm yourself
right,
down, or you can, maybe go paint,
right, right,
do something about
right,
it. That's not, punching your friend in the
right.
face,
Not
which is
ideal,
not
not
the most,
ideal.
not the best way to
Biting, not,
use
don't
that.
bite your friends, turns out.
No.
Not good.
That's what, yeah, this girl.
Yeah.
When I was little,
You were a
I was a
biter?
biter, apparently. Yeah. But let me just tell you, I just find like my own developmental process so fascinating, because when I was talking to my mom, I knew I was a biter, and I was like, what kind of monster was I, that I bit people? And I was talking to my mom, and like that all started when my brother left for college,
Oh.
because my brother's much older. And I was like, of course I was biting people. Like, the one person in my life just left and no one told me why.
Right.
Like, he was gone, and he did not come back, for a
Right.
while. Obviously, he did
Well,
come back, and we were very
when you're
close.
that little, it's eternity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I just think that's again, like I have so much like,
Hmm.
sympathy for kids who are acting out when they've like, when a family member even again just like leaves for a
Right.
while, because
Right.
looking back, I'm like, oh, that's what happened to me, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like, that again, it's just like, okay, instead of biting, let's make someone, once they figured out what was going on, then probably someone was like, oh wait, he's coming
Yeah.
back, like he'll be around.
Right. Right. Right.
But like, if we could have gotten to that sooner, then we could have just like, I could have bit one time, and then we could have like figured out, oh, like Megan's missing her
Right.
brother. I get it.
Oh.
So yeah, so that's kind of like, I think one thing we talk about in social emotional learning programs a lot is like behavior is communication.
Right.
And different kinds of behaviors like are communicating different feelings. And there's always like emotion. We're always having emotions. Like you're
Right.
never emotionless. And so, when a behavior is getting to the point where, it's hurting people or hurting a child or just like disrupting things, like instead of thinking, oh, like this is
Yeah.
bad, like this is a
Yeah.
bad behavior, you can instead like kind of reframe and be like, what are you trying to tell me?
Right.
My
Right.
little girl kicking and screaming was saying, why do people keep leaving?
Right.
And so she just needed a safe place to keep coming back
Yeah.
to and a routine to keep like her mom coming
Right.
back, her, me being there,
Right.
things like that. And not to say that that's always how I handled it.
Right.
Like, definitely could have always handled, some of those challenging behaviors
Mm.
better. But looking back now, it's like, oh, she was just trying to tell us, I'm not okay with people leaving. And
Yeah.
so she just needed to get into that routine, and then it was fine. So once she got into that routine, once we like someone talked
Right.
to her about people, people leaving and
Right.
coming
This
back,
is a
like
normal
sometimes
part of how,
most people will come back, then she got a lot better. So
yeah,
yeah.
expectations. There's a bunch
Yeah,
of things in
yeah.
there, right? Like even kids,
Oh
like kids
yeah.
are smart and like they're just
Oh,
learning about the world for the first time. So like that makes perfect
exactly.
sense. I wonder if
Yeah.
you as you're like kind of unpacking this, one of the other things that is like questions that's occurring for me is like you're seeing all of these things in your preschool setting and you're like, man, I have a lot of questions about how these things interact, like how these things work. Like, what was a
Yes.
question that you had early on that you were like, I need to use the power of research to go
Mm.
answer this?
Yes, and it directly leads to SEL. Only had one like comprehensive curriculum that didn't cover like that basic, like it covered like basic emotions, but I don't even think the content about emotions was at the beginning of the year
Mm-hmm.
in that curriculum. And so I really like my question was like, I think we need to spend the first 2 months talking about feelings and pretty much just that
Whoa.
because like that's when the feelings are happening. And at the time, I didn't know there were like social emotional learning like curricula
Yeah.
and like specific
Right.
programs to do that. And so
Right.
that I created my own
Right.
kind of, I just
Right.
kind of like pieced together things about like I moved the section in the curriculum to the first month
Right.
about like emotions and things like that, and then kind of found books at the public library and
Yeah.
made my own sort of emotion month.
Yeah. See, because you're a
And so
person
I
of
think,
action, Megan. Right. Okay.
yes,
That's a
yes,
true biter. Those are the instincts of a true biter, person of
yes,
action.
yeah. For the quiet ones, because they're my
Yeah.
babies, you have to give them their praise in a different way. That's not glowing out there in front of everyone because they're not, a lot of times they're not comfortable with that. So you give them
Right.
love and praise and attention in a way that fits them. And so, you I just remember having a quiet little one. She was, not to say like she needed a whole lot, to be honest. She was doing great.
Hmm.
But during nap time, she didn't like to nap. And she and I would, kind of giggle and laugh during nap time. During the rest of the school day, I'm busy with other kids, things like that. But during nap was when like she'd come up and like talk to me a little bit and like go lay down and things like that. And like it was
Right.
in those like really quiet moments that we like built our connection. And I
Whoa.
think that's what she needed. She wasn't going to build a connection, with me like in front of the whole class and all of that, things like that.
Right.
So it was, taking those quiet moments with the quiet ones, I think is really important. And I think that again,
Mm.
like that goes to learning social emotional learning, thinking about, okay, what does this child need? And it also goes back to
Right.
my other research that's in more basic research about, children's temperament and knowing that different children need different things. and
Uh,
some kids need you to create those boundaries, and some kids need you to push them through some boundaries safely.
mm, right, right, right,
It's
right,
not one size fits
right.
all. So yeah.
There's so many little nuggets in there, right? Because like first of all, the word temperament, like when I was
Mm,
working in Corelli's lab in the cognition, affect, and temperament lab, like
yeah.
the way we were looking at it was sort of like early forming personality. Like
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah. Yeah.
how we
Yeah.
would describe it. Like what, like how would you describe that to someone who's not in a research kind of like world, like where you say, oh, we're looking at temperament and how it
Yeah.
affects behavior. You know what I mean? Like how would you
Yeah.
describe temperament?
I think about temperament. I think like early personality is a good one. I think like breaking it
Okay.
down even more than that is like how different children respond to the world differently. So it's like
Hmm.
how do you respond to the world and the world of new things and the world of hopefully
Right.
things that you're used to, and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that I really think about that as how you know we look at how their heart rate goes up when
Yeah.
something new happens, and how they
Yeah.
look at new things or
Novelty.
avoid
Right.
them. And then how do they respond to a new person in their life, that kind of thing. So
Right.
I think about that. And then like how that, I mean, I think that really goes to like shaping your personality. Are you going to be, that outgoing person who's, you know, starting their
Yeah.
own business and like doing professional
Right.
development things? Or are you going to be a person
Right.
who's like,
Right.
hey, I'm just going to hang out here and, listen and do my
Yeah.
thing over here, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, let's dive into I want to dive into the adverse childhood
Hmm.
experience and stuff because that's
Yeah.
that is a really clear, important thing that shapes people like in a
Yeah.
massive way.
Yeah.
One of the other kind of like thoughts I was having as you were talking is like around, hey, like your kid's behavior is information. It's telling
Hmm.
you like that there may be something else that you're not seeing,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to like, oh, this is a
Exactly.
bad kid, or they want to like actually hurt me or something. Like
Hmm.
like I think I do this a lot where I'll be like, well, it's about me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
automatically I'll
Yeah.
be like, well, it's because
Yep.
I'm a bad this, I'm a bad at that. Like it's because they want, like, it's a power struggle thing. Like I feel like that's really common.
Hmm.
um and are you familiar with like Othello's error? Are you like this like terminology?
I
Did
think
we talk? Have we talked about
no,
this?
no, no. I don't think we've talked about it.
We probably have. Like for whatever reason when I started getting into psychology, it was like I came from this world of really interested in philosophy. That was sort of like my
Mm.
first love, was like, oh, I really want to understand systems of thinking. How do we
Yeah.
think as human beings? How do we become adults with like these, complex, how do we make decisions in these like gray, vague areas of life? Like
Yeah.
I was just like really interested in thinking. And so that naturally led me into psychology and like brain science. And
Yeah.
then like, okay, well, how do you take a little kid and make them into this super happy,
Yeah.
productive like person, right?
Yeah.
And so part of that journey, I would like, there's a section of my college career where I was like obsessed with facial expressions. And
Yeah.
this is all the work of like Paul Ekman,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
like studying in a lab, like, um, hey, if you make this face, you kind of can feel that expression or
Oh
emotion for a
yeah.
second, right? Like,
Yeah.
or like some of these like kind of nuances and discoveries. And one of the things that really stuck with me in studying that was this concept of Othello's error. And Othello,
Hmm.
like literally the play,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the Shakespeare play, and like where where Othello, what is the story is like Othello accuses Desdemona of like his wife Desdemona of cheating on him,
Yeah.
and he confronts her about it. And
Yeah.
so, and her face, when he confronts her about it, she just like expresses this unbearable, like unbounded fear, and
Yeah.
and just like her jaw drops, and she's just like, oh my god. And his reaction is, see, I knew
Yeah.
it. You're
Yeah.
afraid because you're having this reaction because I was right and you're
Right.
wrong. And the reality and the tragedy of this is that like that she actually is afraid because she knows that he won't believe her.
Yeah, whatever she
And
says.
and like, right, like no matter what. And so like,
Yeah.
even though it was never true,
Yeah.
there's this kind of gory ending to how it goes. But like,
Yeah.
even though that was never true, she expressed the same fear. And there's this like really kind of important like takeaway that I think you just shared, which was, you may see the expression of the emotion, but until you become the detective and
Mm-hmm.
try to like get behind the behavior and emotion of like,
Yeah.
what is it, like, you might not know exactly why they're having that emotion, even though you
Yeah.
think you might be able to identify, oh, that's fear, that's anger, that's whatever. That's
Yeah.
fine. You might be good at identifying what it is, but you might not know why it is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. I
Yeah.
think you like kind of like articulated that well. That like you sort of have to take on this role of being the detective, and I think part of that is understanding like maybe some of these adverse childhood experiences and like what sort of
Yeah.
like experiences can create these patterns of behavior that we might see.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think the piece that really hits home, and I think that hits home in terms of like your example, like I thinking about Othello, is that her response in fear is not just that moment, it's what has happened
Yeah.
before. It's
Mm,
based on what happened previously. Like she's not going to
right.
be like just afraid the first time he accuses her of something and
Right.
doesn't believe her. It's
Right.
that this is a pattern, and I think
Behavioral data.
that's
Yeah.
exactly. And so I think
Yeah.
that's the key with adverse childhood experiences is that they show up in different moments, and
Mm,
their effect shows up in different moments that has nothing to do with that experience. I mean, obviously, if a
yeah.
child has a experience that is very scary, or again, like a loss of a family member, that's huge for children. Even if that family member just goes to college, and everyone else thinks that's totally normal, like that 3-year-old
Right.
does not know
Right.
what that
Right.
means.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that, I think, is like, I love that you put it as like being a detective, because like sometimes
Yeah.
that will come out in moments that doesn't, the emotion may not fit, the
Right.
exact moment, or it's
Right.
so big that you're like, oh, this is not about, this isn't about the fact that we need to go to lunch and you don't want to line
Right.
up. This is about, something has happened,
Yeah.
like you've lost control. I think so
Right.
much of it is like
Yeah.
kind of a feeling of like no children
Yeah.
have so little control in their lives. And when something enormous happens and, kind of knocks them down, the smallest little changes are going to knock them down again because,
Mm-hmm.
they're feeling that same feeling. It kind of comes
Yeah.
through. And so I think of that with like the adverse childhood experiences is, they just come through at different moments. And so when I was
Yeah.
thinking about my working on my dissertation, I just wanted to see like think about what does that mean? How do those show up at school? Like so really early adverse experiences. How does that show up
Mm-hmm.
at school? And then where are the places that we can intervene at school so that we can support those children?
Mm.
And so again, the piece that is near and dear to my heart are the little ones that show, we have two concepts, and one is internalizing and one is externalizing. And the
Right.
internalizing, that's a child kind of shrinking in. I think of that like,
Right.
you think of it as like as adults, like we have anxiety and you kind of shrink yourself and you get
Right.
quiet. And then there's the externalizing, and that's, tantrum for little kids. That's like an adult who's like, gets upset and like,
Right.
kind of tosses their cup across the room, that kind of stuff.
Right. Right. And it
And
doesn't sound like they're mutually exclusive, right? Like I feel like
no.
I was both, like at
Yeah,
different
same.
times and different things, right? Like, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, and exactly. And I mean sometimes like you're more like I tended, when I
Mm-hmm.
was really anxious, like I just like used to shrink down. But
Right.
when I was really mad, I would
Right.
explode. Like so, like yeah, definitely different feelings coming through. But I tended to feel fear and anxiety more than anger necessarily. So,
Right.
I think you're
Right.
just, some kids are prone to feeling and expressing it slightly differently at different
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Plus, like we know like gender roles, right? Like
Yeah,
women are more conditioned to feel certain types of
yeah,
emotions rather like
exactly.
men publicly, adult men publicly are basically only allowed to display one emotion.
Yeah,
There's like one socially acceptable emotion,
yeah,
anger, right?
yeah,
Like that's the only, like
exactly.
if you're happy, then you're soft, right? If you're friendly, then you're
Yeah,
soft, right? But if
yeah,
you're angry, then you're like a strong male, like leader or something, right? Like there's something
yeah,
about that that's
exactly.
just like kind of bizarre. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, sorry to
Ugh.
interrupt you.
No,
Flow
no,
here.
no. So, but those are the kind of the different things that we were looking at
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like how adverse experiences, how does it show up at school? And
Yeah.
what we found is that children with those experiences are more likely to kind of, show both, those internal, the internalizing kind of behaviors, shrinking down and externalizing.
Yeah.
And that's, those kind of explosions. And then when we looked at for those children who are more likely to show that internalizing, they actually had poor relationships with teachers in kindergarten.
Whoa.
Again, this
Whoa.
is why they're near and dear to my heart because they're so easy to forget about because they're
Yeah.
sitting in the corner and so even though maybe they're not expressing, they're not as disruptive, but they may not
Right.
be able to connect. You kind of have to work a little bit harder to connect with them.
Right.
And so we saw that with those children and the relationships, having poor relationships with teachers actually led to kind of poor
Yeah.
school connection, kind of like led to more internalizing behaviors when they're in third grade later on, and then poor school connection in fifth grade. And I think, and we didn't see that same pattern with externalizing. With externalizing, children had like still had pretty good relationships with teachers,
Mm.
and didn't that wasn't related to school connectedness when they were older. So it just kind of, it was more like externalizing begets externalizing. That was kind of the only thing we found, but we
Yeah.
didn't find that it had any impact on, children's relationship with their school or feelings at
Right.
school. And I think that's so important. So that was in school. We looked at the school connectedness in fifth grade. And that's a huge time because that is right before they transition to middle school. And you imagine if you don't
Yeah.
have a good connection with school as you're leaving elementary school and you're about to go to a much harder, difficult place
Right.
and transition and meet new people and
Yeah.
all of this, like you're not set up with like
Yeah.
a really strong support
Right.
feeling of
Yeah.
school. And so I think like that's such an important time where like,
Hmm.
you know, if we had, if I were to develop an intervention based on like that whole kind of cascading
Right.
trajectory that we found,
Right.
I would
Right.
say, okay, we need to look at kindergarten teachers and help
Whoa.
them help these kids. Even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones, and maybe we can intervene and you know prevent that kind of
Whoa.
cascading effect later on.
What an
So
important part of your journey and like discovery. I mean, right? Because like
yeah,
that, like so that was an important turning point. What was the next like place that led you to? Like, were you like, oh, I feel like I've done this research component. Like, I'm ready to go into this practice, or like, because you were in policy. Like, tell me more
hmm
about like where that pointed you.
yeah, and I think when I worked in policy, I think I that was a lot to see like, okay, what does this look like? What does it look like to
Hmm.
kind of what kind of questions can you answer? What kind of questions can you ask when you're kind of at the policy, at the state policy level? And, it's very different. You can ask very different questions.
Mm.
And I think, it's always this kind of like balance in my research of I, how, like, at what's the level that I'm looking at. And so I think with going into policy, it was like, okay, what what supports can we give early
Yeah.
childhood leaders, early childhood, educators to, if we're going back to like, a lot of times it's looking at things not related to, social emotional stuff, and that's just
Right.
fine. It's just mostly giving them supports.
Yeah.
But the things I would think about is can we give them professional development training on
Yeah.
social emotional things, like
Right. Right.
can
Right. Right.
we
Right. Right.
how the
Like
huge
facilitate the
exactly
information flow from here's what we know to
exactly
here's what we do.
and you think about like I I constantly go from thinking about like a certain student and like what their development was, and a certain kid and what they look
Right.
like and what they might go, and then kind of pulling back and thinking, okay, if I can work with hundreds of teachers, I can affect thousands
Right.
of those little kids.
Right.
Even though I'm
Right.
not directly working with them, I can,
Right.
if we can help teachers recognize, you know, behavior is communication, and
Right.
here's what this behavior might mean, and here's how you can interrogate it. I think that
Hmm.
you think about how many kids you can help with that, and so I think
Yeah.
about that in the policy space is, I think both for the children. I mean, I will always kind of come back like my point of interest is always like kids, and I think that's just
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
what drew me to everything is loving to work with kids and thinking about them, and thinking of ways to support them. But I think we can't forget about the adults, and I have to remind myself that. I think that if the only
Even
thing
the
that
adults do this, right?
oh,
Like
adults,
they're
yeah,
just
forget
like,
about.
yeah, they just like forget about myself. Like
Oh
I'm worried
yeah.
about my
Oh,
kid.
exactly.
You know?
And I think the one thing I love about social emotional learning is like if the only thing that happens when a teacher or an educator or even a school leader learns about social emotional learning and they figure out something about themselves, and like
Whoa.
hopefully it connects to children, you hope, yeah, okay, then like it maybe like will change. But I think adults can take a lot from social emotional learning. I know in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
journey of learning about different programs and curricula, and like I have learned so much about emotions, and like it's helped me think about my own
Yeah.
emotions and think about communication, and like
Right.
now that I have a daughter, thinking about what it means for her. So like as a parent, it helps. I think I'm like, oh, what's
Hmm.
this feeling you're having? Like you're screaming in my face, but
Right.
you're
Yeah.
6 months old, so I know it's not about me.
Right.
Like
Right. Right.
so like
Right. Right.
I take deep breaths, and I'm like, oh, you're just hungry. Okay. So I think adults can get as much out of social emotional learning, if not more, than the children
Yeah.
do. And so I think kind of connecting, like I think that's like in the policy space, it's a lot
Yeah.
about supporting the adults who are working with children as
Yeah.
best we can.
Yeah. That's just like such a strong. I'm just like nodding my head, because it's just such a strong belief for me. Like it's your classic, airplane
Oh
oxygen
yeah,
mask scenario, right? Like, there's like, dude,
absolutely.
if we're better, then we will be better for kids. If
Yeah,
we're training
exactly.
our educators better, then they will be able to show up better for kids.
Yeah.
Like it all sort of, it's built on that. Like all of the
Mm-hmm.
modeling of how we do things,
Mm-hmm.
like it just feels so important, but yet
Yeah.
so like it's just so hard to justify like
Yeah.
spending time and energy on that kind of thing. It's like, well, we have a
Yeah.
billion other trainings to do.
Right.
Um,
Right.
what's like something in your career or life or like journey with this
Mm-hmm.
that has changed, like maybe a belief that you held or an idea that you had that has changed as you've kind of evolved in your career?
Hmm. Here's I wouldn't say it's changed. It's something that I keep having to remind myself. And I think
Mm,
it's very present right now in my life because my daughter, and like,
yeah.
we're learning about each other, and we're in,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
meeting each other and getting to know each other. I think it's like we forget how much children affect their own environment. And,
Hmm.
I think my husband and I are very, very lucky that our daughter has made parenthood very easy. Like she's slept
Whoa.
pretty well. We have a few, bad nights here and there, but overall she's a good sleeper. She's very soothable. And,
Yeah.
and we soothe her, like we respond, and like that's us. But the fact that she then is like soothed is not us,
Right.
that's her.
Right. Right.
And so like sometimes, I think a lot of people like to remind us that like, oh, if you have a second one, they'll be different. And I'm like, I know.
Right.
Like I know this is not
Right,
just
right,
me.
right.
But I
Like,
think that
thank
just
you
like,
so much for that
yeah,
helpful advice.
yeah.
Yeah.
But well, like I would love for you to tell me I'm just like the best parent ever because my daughter is
Right.
the best. But I mean, I think it is like it is such a good reminder that like they they're pulling things from you. Like like as a teacher, we talked about like in some social emotional learning programs, they talk about like
Mhm.
hot buttons and like, the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
kids do that like it's not so much about what they're doing, it's about how you're responding.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
recognizing like, oh, this thing really gets under my skin and I need
Yeah.
to recognize that. And I think like that like child evoking that from you, I think we just have to remind ourselves that, you know, they're they're just testing everything and
Yeah.
we're the ones with like the information about the world and
Right.
we should be the ones with the tools to help them like okay here's a better way to
Right.
respond.
Right.
And so I think like as adults just recognizing like it's not you are creating this world and they are in it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you're in this world together and like they're learning and you're learning and like I
Right.
think that to me I think is the thing I come back to a lot. And I funny
Hmm.
enough like never did like there's research that looks at how much like children how much of an effect a child has like just because of who they are versus like what their parents did or something like that. And but I just always find that kind of stuff fascinating is like how much of this is
Hmm.
like because of the child because
Yeah.
they're who they are. And so I think that part is fascinating because I think as adults we
Whoa.
forget
Yeah.
that children are people.
Oh my God. I know. It's so easy.
Yeah,
Like,
because they're so
oh my
cute.
gosh. They're so cute. Their needs are so basic.
Yeah, exactly. But their feelings are complex.
They're huge.
They're so big.
It's like we know this, right? Like it's like they're disproportionate to the faculty they have to manage it. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it comes across as like, oh my God, like come on, keep
yeah.
it together.
Oh,
But
it's
like they
easy.
literally don't have the horsepower to manage it.
Exactly. And it's easy to say like, "Ugh, you're gonna get upset about, the yogurt dropping on the floor, but it's
Right.
like, well, to them, like that's a big deal. Like,
It is.
they
Yeah.
were really excited
I'm starving.
as a hangry
Right.
person myself. I will never
Right.
dismiss a hangry child because I get it. It is upsetting when you're hungry and something does not go right. And yes, I think that's very important that they get their
It
food.
really is. So one of the things that's cool about what you do is you have worked on heavy stuff, adverse childhood experiences, developmental risks, systems change. Like, what is giving you hope in 2025? What are you optimistic right now about in the field of early childhood?
Yes. I think that in 2025, we are we are potentially about to test the importance of early childhood
Hmm.
by potentially like making some policy decisions that may take it away from people, take the opportunities to send your children to places. And I think we're about to learn just how crucial it is for both children and families. I think we forget how much, especially I do. Like, again, I think about the children in the schools, and how important it is and how to
Yeah.
support them there. But I think we forget how important having a place for children to go so parents can
Hmm.
work or
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that. And I think if we are going to take some money away from that space, we're going to learn very quickly that that's not sustainable for a lot of families to have
Mm,
no childcare. And so
totally.
that's a heavy one, but I think we, yeah, I think we're about to learn just how much childcare and early childhood really holds the country
Yeah.
up, um,
Yeah.
economically
If
especially.
you, yeah, for sure. Like, so in your depth of research and experience, um, I'm thinking like future kind of pacing. If someone just if you walked into a classroom and someone gave you a magic wand, what would be something you would just instantly adjust about what we're doing in early childhood?
Oh,
Like for instance, measuring like behavior or
mm-hmm.
evaluating classroom quality or
Yeah.
like, like, is there something that's jumping out at you right now that you're like, oh man, if I could just like poof
Yeah.
this into existence or out of existence, what would you do?
I would make all childcare publicly funded like public school.
Mm,
So not quality related. I would fix our the system of how it's funded, because
mm.
it's a very like I'm not in economics, and
Yeah,
funny, like I've
yeah,
never
yeah.
been drawn to economics, but I in
Right.
only the way that I try to make early childhood about like the economic picture.
Yeah, yeah.
But the way that the system is that families can barely afford it and early
Yeah.
childhood providers can barely give it, like
Right.
to like
Right.
does not make
Right.
sense, when again I think this is like the system that is holding up most of the economy.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be like that was like a very big public policy thing would be, yeah,
Right.
having it publicly,
Right.
like taxpayer money goes and you know gives
Right.
gives early childhood to infants and toddlers and things like that.
Right.
So that's the big
Yeah, it's
picture
interesting
thing.
how that's working. Like, because some places, like, there's some states that are like investing in like like
Oh
Colorado,
yeah,
universal
yeah,
pre-K.
yeah,
Like, they're just doing it. Because I think what's interesting is like some of the funding, if you say things like, "Oh, we want these kids to have better relationships with their school or parent," like it's almost like too fluffy for people to understand what that
yeah,
means.
yeah,
But what like what from we look at like where results are happening, if you show that there's a better economic ROI for a
yeah,
city or a state when
yeah,
you invest in early childhood, like suddenly money from like business economics is coming in to support it, and like
yeah,
suddenly it's like a little bit easier to figure out how it all makes sense,
yeah,
for whatever reason.
yeah,
um I wonder if there's anything that's like that you've found in your world of research that has clearly helped you see the connection between investment or just like, change progress in early childhood
hmm,
development and like future later adult outcomes, because that's a pretty
yeah,
longitudinal viewpoint.
yeah. There's a few studies, especially older ones, obviously, because the children need to be like adults. But there are a few kind of like mainstay studies. There's the Perry
Yeah.
preschool study, that looks at children, and primarily they look at children with from like lower income families and the
Right.
effect of like going to preschool on adult outcomes. And like for the most part, like across the board, it's positive.
Yeah.
It's positive, like children have better, like higher graduation rates and less
Right.
likely to, go to jail and, different
Right.
things like
Right.
that. I know even, and some of the longitudinal work that I'm familiar with is also on social emotional learning programs too.
Right.
And those programs can have, effects on that, like graduation rates and
Right.
kind of economic success in young adulthood and things like that. So I think those are
Yeah.
definitely like, I think they're very promising. I think I also think it's very important to consider, there's probably a lot of studies that didn't find, these studies are
Yeah.
based on really quality preschool.
Right.
So that kind of goes back to your previous question
Right.
of like, it's not just about sending children somewhere and have it like, it's not like a black
Right.
box and they're here,
Right.
so therefore they have these better outcomes. It's they're
Yeah.
here and they're getting quality experience and again,
Right.
developing hopefully quality relationships with teachers,
Right. Right.
and with school, and then that has those effects. And
Right.
so I
Right.
think I think that those are the key. Like again, the social emotional learning programs that have these long-term effects, I think are really important to look at because, it's not just that a child went to school and learned their ABCs, it's that they went to school
Right.
and kind of learned about themselves and learned how to problem solve
Right.
and learned how to
Yeah.
connect with others and things like that. And so I think those things have to like come hand in hand. So like, providing it, but also making sure
Mm-hmm.
that what you're providing is,
Right.
is
Right.
high quality. And by that I mean,
Right.
the teachers are taken care of. The teachers can take
Yeah.
care of the
Oh
kids.
my God.
That I think that's
Right.
the critical point. Like,
There's nothing that's more obnoxious right now to me as a person who's trying to like build out more and more professional development
yeah,
for educators, like early childhood educators, to be like, oh, why don't we take a group of resilient, hardworking, resourceful people who are who are
yeah,
burning out,
yeah,
and then bring in consultants and trainers to say, here's how to be more resilient. Have you thought
yeah,
about being more resilient? Let's like work on your resilience. That's what
yeah,
we need. We should do resilience training. It's like, oh my God, this is bananas.
yeah,
Come
yeah.
on.
I know. Yeah, we just need to make the system easier. Like that's kind of it. Kind of goes back to like make funding better.
Right.
They should
Right.
have higher
Right.
salaries.
Right.
But like it
Like,
just
like the bare minimum. Come on. Like, we're not even
they
at
should
like
be
a bare
making
minimum.
more. Yeah,
It's
they should be
crazy.
making more than someone who is in a minimum wage job.
Yeah.
Like they should not be
what I'm
making minimum
learning.
wage.
Right. It's like, it's a skilled position. Right.
Yes,
And this is like this is
hugely
so what we're talking
skilled.
about right now is Dan Worry's book, right?
Yeah,
Daycare Myth,
yeah,
where
yeah,
it's like, oh, is daycare, and daycare is becoming a bad, dirty word, right,
yeah,
in early childhood, because
yeah.
it's become this kind of like, oh, you put your kid here, it's a babysitter job.
Right,
And so who do you hire for a babysitter? You hire Susie down the street who's
right.
14,
Yeah,
and like you trust her, and so that's fine, and she's probably fine with kids. But what we're talking about in early childhood development, early learning centers and preschools behave, like modeling behavior,
yeah,
emotion regulation, like
yeah.
all of these foundational skills that like
Oh
their
yeah,
brains are going to absorb. It's just it's wild.
yeah, yeah,
One thing as you're talking about like these studies in like, hey, how are we connecting economics and early childhood, and like how do we find the resources to invest in this thing that we all agree is really, really important, like for
yeah,
kids?
yeah,
Like everyone in the universe, I think, would say, if you walked by them on the street with a microphone and you were like, hey, is it important to like invest in education? I think 100% of people would say, yeah, that seems important.
yeah,
But like how different is that from what's actually happening?
yeah, yeah,
If we look at the world of 2025, because we're recording this in May 2025, the amount of information, the volume of information has gone up, and so when you
yeah,
dial up the knob, then also the noise goes up as well.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
there's this increase in noise and volume of like information that's out there. And I'm saying
yeah,
the word information, and I'm including things that are true, things that are not true, things that
yeah,
are, I'm including all of information, just
yeah,
stuff, right? Like
yeah.
it's out there. What is like one beacon of truth for you in early childhood that's like, I don't know, been helping you keep like a North Star on, up like a pulse on the field, or has been like reliable for you in like gaining new knowledge that feels like true to research? Like, what's just been like a North Star for you?
Yeah. I think my answer is going to be kind of a little bit annoying, so I do apologize about that. I mean, one thing is like, having gone off Twitter because it's 2025, May of
Yeah.
2025, and that
Yeah.
Twitter is no longer, it used to be very helpful in making
Yeah.
those connections, and it is no longer. LinkedIn is very helpful kind of see what other people are doing. So I think, following different organizations and
Right.
things like that, especially advocacy
Like Dan Worry's
organizations.
there.
Dan Worry, looking at like, I follow, 0 to 3, and they have a lot of like
Yep.
policy advocacy things come out. So I think that to
Yeah,
me
they're huge.
is really helpful to keep getting a kind of keeping a hand on the pulse of what's going
Yeah.
on. And then the other thing, and this might be because I'm like more in the policy space right now, but
Yeah.
like I've just recently like started looking back at like just research articles and
Yeah.
because I haven't stayed up with it as much. And so kind of going back and like, again, just like an article came out about like long-term effects of, like children's school readiness and,
Right.
young adulthood and things like that. And I'm like, oh, like good, we're still looking at this and we're still
Right.
finding like, effects. And these are,
Right.
more recent articles, so they're
Right.
not from like the 19th. Perry Preschool is like something from the
Yeah.
1960s or 70s, and these longitudinal papers are coming out, and they're from like the early 2000s. Are like that's where they're
Mm.
that's when that
Yeah.
preschool started. So I think that going back to the research, which is the annoying answer, is
Yeah.
going back to like
Yeah. Yeah.
the primary research of
Right.
what's happening on early childhood, and just
Yeah.
trying to remember like, okay, like we're still having articles come out about how important it
Right.
is,
Right.
because I think we need more and more of those right now.
Right. Yeah. I think we need to do that. I think our job is to capture those things, like the information that's coming out of the top of the funnel,
Yeah.
and repackage it and
Yeah.
share it. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like that's a thing. You and I are both in this space of like taking the things we know and turning it into the things we do. And I feel like
Yeah.
that transfer. Oh, there's so much to do, Meg.
Yeah, I know. It's a
Holy smokes.
big feat.
I have big feet.
I said it's a big feat.
Okay, that's
But maybe,
different.
I don't
That's
know.
very different.
Yeah.
Just don't bite me.
Those are different things. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude. What's
Yeah.
so I wanna close us out with two things. One, where do people go to find more about you and what you do? And what's something that you wish more people knew about you?
Oh gosh. I think the best place to find me is LinkedIn.
Cool.
And I don't know what my LinkedIn. I think you just searched my name.
I bet
I'd
we'll
say,
find you.
yeah. I'm not super active. I do a lot of thumbs up and likes, but I don't do too much posting right now. But that might change. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. It's
Anything
2025.
could happen. And then the other question is, what would I want people to know about me? I think, that they don't already know. I mean, I guess if you didn't know me, then I think probably it would be important that like it seems like I have it all together, and that like I have this like beautifully linear journey of like, oh,
Right.
I just like happened in a developmental classroom, and or class, and then
Right.
went developmental, and then I like worked with kids, so I worked with kids, and it really like it sounds very beautifully crafted, but it's
Right.
only in hindsight that is the case. A lot of these
Right.
things, again, it was just kind of like, oh, I guess I'll take this class. And then it was like, ooh, working in preschool looks fun. And then, it just things like that kept happening. And I'll just say, after I graduated from my PhD program, it was, I finished in May of 2020, so the pandemic had just
Right.
hit. And so, I ended up getting a postdoc at Stanford University, and it's like, okay, like you got this
Yeah. Yeah.
postdoc. And, it really was like, and it was like the perfect postdoc for me, but it was also the only thing that I had because I was applying for other jobs
Mm,
and all of the other job markets like kind of froze at the time. And so,
right.
like, I did it, again, like I wouldn't take it back. And I thought it was like the perfect postdoc. And I was very, very lucky to like have had that opportunity. But even that, like, even going to the perfect postdoc was like, oh, this is like, I got that job the week that everything shut down during the pandemic. And so, it's so much of like
Yeah.
this journey and like kind of
Whoa.
getting to where I am is just based on just like kind of grabbing opportunities where they come and
Right.
thinking, like having a little bit of thought, like, oh, I wasn't just looking at like any postdoc. It was like I was only looking at like the ones that really fit my needs and fit my interests.
Right.
And like that kind of is how it worked out. So I think like
Yeah.
that's just something people should know that like I can paint a really pretty picture, and it like on a canvas that has like a bunch of scribbles out, I guess is the point. Just like I've erased, like when I talk about
Right.
it,
Right.
you don't see all of
Right.
the like lines that I traced
Right.
around and
Right.
things like that.
Right.
I don't know
All of
why I'm making an
the pile
artist.
of eraser,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
eraser dust. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think
Oh man.
that's especially for like folks who are just getting into like the field of early childhood and things like that. I think it's important
Yeah.
to remember that sometimes it's just like you just have to take like opportunities that you don't know if they're going to work out. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's the one thing.
I'm with
I,
you.
yeah, I don't
Dude,
know
you're
why
the
I made like
best.
a painting metaphor because I'm so bad at painting. That's I guess another thing people should know. I am not
Well,
good at art.
with sure, with that crummy attitude, Meg.
Yeah, because I'm always erasing it. That's why I'm not good.
Just send it, dude. Just
Yeah,
send it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I love about you is how you I think it feels like this meandering thing, but to me it feels like you have followed your interest the whole time, and so that
Yeah.
has sort of stayed the same. And you're like your curiosity and like you being the
Yeah.
detective of like okay, this is the thing that I need to solve in the world, or like I need to
Mm-hmm.
understand this better in order to take action on that. And I think like your path to doing that is just like so cool and admirable. And I just love people like you who you're like you just send it. Like you're just in the groove of it. You're like, this is the thing that I care about. Like I care about kids.
Yeah.
Like how can I like I will put myself here in order to help kids better, or I will put myself there to help kids better. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I just appreciate your adaptation to the world and to the field. And man, I'm just grateful that our worlds are. I'm in your orbit,
I
and we get to be
know.
friends too.
I know. I know. Yeah. This friendship just is just a beacon of light, and it's so fun. I think it is so fun that we get along so great, but then it's also that like we have that similar interest because there's not like
Yeah,
I mean, I have like, friends in
yeah,
grad school and things like that, but it's not like not everyone like
right,
went this route.
yeah,
And then I have my
right,
colleagues, of
right,
course, like their interests, but it's like the fact that we built our
right,
friendship up and then like our
right.
interests kind of like meshed
It's like what
more
the
and more
heck?
together
So
as
fun,
time went
like yeah,
on. Oh my gosh, that was so
right,
so fun.
right. Like we don't only have to talk about running.
I know. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, you inadvertently
Pretty cool.
got me to meet my husband because you're the reason I went joined that running group, and that running group is the
Wait,
reason.
what? Do
Yeah.
I not know this? Are you wait?
Yeah, it
Are
was
you?
you don't know. Okay, Scott and I met
Oh my
through
god!
Rosie. Yeah.
I
Do
love.
you remember?
I miss Rosie.
I know. I
Now I
know.
remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I miss Rosie so much.
So running is
She was
also very
a
important.
riot,
Oh gosh, she was so great. Yeah. She
dude.
was a
That's so
doll.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So joining that running
Hell
group
yeah!
was great for me.
Shout out to what used to be Anthem in State
Oh,
College. Another
RIP.
great example of people building community and just like making
Yeah.
things happen.
Oh,
Like we
totally.
held we basically were like, hey, can we do a 5K, 10K race with this made up make believe course that we have no permissions from the town
Yeah.
to like execute? And Anthem was like, hell yeah, we're
Yeah.
in, like, let's do it. And they
And they
like,
made a
brought people
tent?
out and they
Yeah.
gave away gift cards to like prizes. They were
Yeah,
like,
that was
perfect
awesome.
example of like showing up and just contributing in a community
Yes.
and like and building a relationship that like led to good business outcomes and like
Yeah.
personal outcomes and like
Oh,
like, I don't know,
totally.
just a great other example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh, that was
the heck?
awesome.
Cool, dude.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being with me and
course.
hanging out and sharing your brain with everyone. And I can't wait
thanks.
to do this again because this is so fun.
Yeah. Yay.
Rock and roll.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Human Skills Training. If this episode sparked something, just share it with an educator or a leader who needs it. If you want to pick my brain, just drop me a line at chrisdanilo.com. See you next time.